Okay, so the last piece we're going to talk about here is the inspection piece. All right, here's where a big strength of our company, I think, could also perhaps be a weakness, because to inspect things happens all the time, right? To inspect things the right way, however, is not quite as common. All right, so we're going to talk about that. So this is probably one of the most famous quotes. I remember who said this.
Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan, right? When he was talking about with Gorbachev. And what does this mean?
That means I trust you to do what you say you're going to do, but it's okay, I'm going to verify.
Yeah, and it was a two-way street, right? So that, yes, we trust each other, but we're both going to verify that we're saying what we said we were going to do, right? Because if you go back again to your outer ring tool, is that there are boundaries, right? There are things that you have each said that you were going to do when you are holding other people accountable, and so you want to make sure that that the responsibilities that on both sides are being lived up to. And then the other quote here is, inspect what you expect. Have you ever gone through an inspection and the person who's inspecting things is measuring the wrong thing? You know, when you're like, what are they doing? They're not looking at the right numbers. And we've all been through some sort of inspection like that. But if you think about key expectations and you think about what is inspected, I always go back to as a percentage of servers, how many would you say like side work? All right, somewhere probably around 0%. Okay, maybe there's 2%, couple weirdos who like side work, right? How many do side work as a percentage of servers in your restaurant?
100%.
Somewhere right around 100%. How many would you say like to sell with the add-ons?
20.
All right, so it could be 20%, could be 50%, could be 70% in your restaurant, whatever that number is. As a percentage of your servers, how many would you say actually do the selling? Whatever the same number is, probably, whether it's 20 or 50 or 70, okay? Now, if I were to ask Rob Webster, which is more important to him, that we have servers who are selling or servers who are doing side work, what do you think he would say?
Selling.
Selling, all right? And in your key expectations and our KPI goals for the year, which would you say is more important, the selling or the side work?
Selling.
Now, why is it, though, that 100% of your servers do side work, but only 50 or whatever that number is percent do the selling?
Because we inspect the side work.
Aha! There's a very clear inspection, right? They know exactly what is inspected, and they know that it is going to be verified, if you go back to the last slide, okay? And it is probably done in an effective way. What we need to do is have that same mentality now for your key expectation, okay? We're going to show a little video here of what an ineffective inspection looks like. All right, so we'll watch this. Okay, so here's the last piece of our outer ring, okay? And then we're going to take a break. So, inspect what you expect. Mutually agree on how and when the inspection will occur. What is the key word in that?
Mutual.
All right, so you are mutually agreeing, okay? So, you need to make sure, this goes back to the last piece about alignment, okay? That you are mutually agreed on how and when that is going to occur, okay? 2, provide support, reinforce progress, and promote learning, okay? Going back to that video, how do you think that employee felt?
Not very good.
Okay, so it's almost like, you know, if you were to have a server, okay, and at their cash out, you're going, hey, you missed all of our add-on goals, you know, it's no good, you got to do better. And if you didn't, at the beginning of the shift, mutually agree, hey, we're going to be looking at, if one of your goals, you know, from your key expectation was the beer sales, okay? If you did say, hey, we're going to be measuring beer sales, we're looking to get a 10% lift, So I'm going to measure that you are going to sell 8 beers this shift, and you have the handout, right, to sell your craft beers. You did 6 last week, 7 the week, or 7 2 weeks ago, you did 8 last week. What else can we do? And then at the end of the shift, you go over and tell them which inspection is going to be more effective.
Second one.
The second one. Okay? So, how are you going to inspect your key expectations? And as you go through and you look at this, the planned inspection, the last column that's on here, okay? So, what is going to be the frequency of those inspections and what are they going to look like? And that should be part of that why, what, when conversation, again, because it's mutual. Okay, so you kind of fill that out afterwards. You say, hey, we're going to measure this next week. We're going to measure this every day, whatever those things are. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Okay, so next it's time to drink. So we're going to have a break about craft beer. And how this is going to work is that blah, 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 blah. Okay, so welcome back. Hopefully everybody enjoyed some beer. Hopefully not too much beer, but either way, it'll make this session a lot of fun, right? Because now we're going to talk about what happens when you see that an expectation is in jeopardy of not being met. And this is probably, for me, anyways, was my favorite part of this process. Now, you'll notice that, however, that we spent a good portion of time on the outer ring. And going back to yesterday and what you've learned today, why is it so important and why did we spend so much time on that outer ring?
If you really do the outer ring right, you can really set that key expectation up to get alignment and be able to communicate it right.
Yeah, so again, the more time you spend on the outer ring getting it right, the much less chance you have. This ring actually, if you remember yesterday, shrinks. Okay, it becomes a much less important. And a lot of times everybody wants to go immediately to, well, that person's not doing the job, let's fix it, right? But you need to, again, go back, and you're going to have electronic versions of all these. Did you form it right? Was it communicated with the why, what, when? Did you use the alignment dialogue? And was the inspection process part of the mutually agreed upon? If you get through all of those, okay, and you still see that your key expectation is in jeopardy of falling, then you're going to do what is known as the accountability conversation, and this is from the book. Now, I will tell you, for those of you who read in depth in the book, they talk about different people within the book and what can be the cause for them to not be achieving, and they go through whether it's training and motivation. We're not going to spend as much time on that piece. We're really just going to focus in on the model, because the model is really the important part of knowing how you have this conversation, and then the specific reason why that person is not achieving what the key expectation is going to vary. So we're going to spend just time going over the model in general and actually in quite specifics in terms of the procedure. I wanted to revisit the term critical link, okay? And the critical link is the person or groups who, for any reason, has the greatest potential for breaking the path to accountability by not delivering on what you expect. So what does that mean?
It means it's the weakest link.
Okay, so that's everyone's first thought, right, is that it's the weakest link, okay? Don't think of it that way, okay? If you think of a chain, okay, and let's just say that you're trying to pull something up over the corner of a building, okay? What is the critical link within that chain? It's probably wherever the corner of that building is, right? Because that's where the greatest potential for that chain to break is when it's coming over the corner of that building. So if I was pulling something up over a building, that link that's on the corner, that would be my critical link. Now as I pull that thing up, does that change which link it is?
Yes.
It does, right? So let me just give you an example. So let's talk about, let's just say this convention, okay? So for us to have a great convention, who is the critical link?
Cheryl Peak.
Okay, so it's different people, right? So 6 months ago, when we had to figure out where we were going to have it, right? Because if we didn't know where we were going to have it, would we have a good convention? No, right? So Ed and Cheryl are really the people who are the critical link at that point because they have the greatest potential for breaking the path to accountability. Now, once that is chosen, okay, then it was like, okay, so what do we do for content? So then perhaps us as facilitators, right? We become the critical link because now we have to make sure that the content. Yesterday, right, the critical link was probably at the beginning of the convention, it was Lou and Bill, right? Louie and Bill. So the critical link is, it's not a person, okay? Yes, there are people that are critical links in your process, but don't get locked in to think that it's always just one person, okay? Because the critical link to you achieving your beer, let's just say your craft beer goals, okay? If your beer sales are one of yours, who might be a critical link there?
The brewer.
All right, so if you can't get the beer, right, if they're saying, well, we're not going to have that beer for 2 months, they become the critical link. Who else might be a critical link?
The delivery.
Okay, so maybe it's the guy who's delivering. Maybe it's the servers. Maybe it's the bartender. Okay, so the critical link, right, you have that expectation chain, but it could be different people throughout the process. But it's not necessarily the weakest link. Okay, and you're going to have this accountability conversation when someone becomes a critical link and you think that they are in jeopardy of not delivering. Okay? So here's the triggers for this conversation. Key expectation is unmet, it's in jeopardy to not be met, and extra steps are required to ensure delivery. Because again, your key expectation is what?
One that I have to achieve.
Not delivering is
Not an option.
not an option, okay? So if it looks like it's becoming an option, you need to take steps. And we call this lift, all right? Because if you have somebody who is in jeopardy of not delivering, you remember from our other Oz that there is this line. And where is that person probably living?
Below the line.
Below the line, right? They are stuck in that victim cycle. So you have to lift them up so that they can do see it, own it, solve it, do it. Okay? So here's the 4 steps. Nice little acronym here. Listen for obstacles, okay? And the question is, what are the obstacles getting in the way of making progress? So that person begins to talk out to you, okay? What are the ways, the things that are getting in the way of making progress? Identify obstacles you can influence, okay? And that means you as the coach, okay? So which of these obstacles do you need to most overcome and why? Because if, I'm just going to give you an example, if there is an obstacle, you being their boss, that you can help them with, okay, then you want to make sure that you are identifying those obstacles. Facilitate the solve it question, which you all remember hopefully from last year. What else can you do? And then test remove it, what actions you're going to take. Now what do you notice about all these questions? Who are they directed to?
They're directed from the coach and they're directed in an open question kind of format.
Yeah, you'll see that there's this key word, you, okay? Again, this is about having that person, okay? How do you hold other people accountable is really you have to get them above the line. They have to become an active participant, okay? And you've got to figure out how to get them above that line, and you can do that with taking these steps. You know, one of the great quotes that I ever heard is that great leaders are problem givers, right? They're not problem solvers, okay? You cannot solve their accountability problem. We learned that last year, right? All accountability is self-accountability. You can help to lift them above the line. So we're actually going to, we're going to go through and we're going to pair up, okay? So I need everybody to get in groups of 3 and everybody choose, there's going to be partner A, partner B, and partner C. Each identify yourself as either A, B, or C. Okay, now, you remember that on the F for the facilitate, on the solve it question, it says what else can you do? If you have somebody that in the solve it part is getting stuck, okay? So they are, there's nothing I can do, okay? Then there's 3 additional questions that you can ask. And we're going to hand this out for you because this is your inner ring tool, much like you had an outer ring tool for that. Will you be held accountable for achieving this result? And what's the price you pay if you don't achieve it? Okay, if you ask that question, again, helps to get them unstuck. If you had to take accountability for one of these obstacles, which one would it be and why? Again, you're presenting options to them. So now somebody who's throwing their hands up, they're forced to choose something. And then the last one, which might seem extreme, okay, if your life depended on this, what would you do? Okay? And again, these questions really just help to narrow their focus, and it pushes them harder. And the last question is extreme on purpose. If they are looking to put blame on somebody else, okay, we need to reverse the gears. Okay. Now let's just kind of go through the inner ring tool. So we have this inner ring tool here. So if you were going to have a conversation because you know that your key expectation is in jeopardy of not being met, and we've already talked about the inspection process. Besides you, who else needs to know that conversation is coming?
The person you're having it with?
The person you're having it with, okay? It's going to be much more effective. Just like a surprise inspection is not very effective, a surprise lift conversation is not as effective too. So this piece here, if you unfold it here, you will see that much like the other one there is, and this one there's actually only 2 steps. One is to plan the accountability conversation, okay? Again, your key expectation that has been formed goes in the left-hand white box, and then record your notes for planning here. Okay, so you're going to think about what are the obstacles that you think this person might come up with. Okay, what are some obstacles that you might be able to influence? What are some solve it questions? Lack of movement. What are some of the things? And then how are you going to test for movement? This is just about you getting prepared, much like that other conversation. You're then going to record the actual notes from the conversation here. And then you'll notice that it says, this one here is complete the discussion questionnaire. So if I am going to be having this conversation with people and you want them to be prepared, all you do with this piece, and that's why this is folded like this, is you can really just tear this piece off and you give it to them. You say, hey, we seem to be struggling with this key expectation. I'd like to have a conversation around it. In preparation for that, I'd like you to think about these questions. So now they come in prepared. Okay, so let's go through and see how this works. Okay. Excuse me. There we go. So, partner A, you are hopelessly stuck below the line. Okay, and since our key leader earlier had talked about the importance of covers for this year, let's just say that you are a manager in a restaurant and you are in jeopardy of not delivering on the 1% cover growth that is the key KPI for our organization this year. So you are stuck below the line in terms of driving covers into your restaurant. Partner B, you're the coach. So you need to use this lift model, and you can certainly use the tool here, okay, in order to coach that person or lift that person up. And partner C, what you're going to do, which is great for this one here, is you're going to record notes from the conversation. So as you see this, you're going to be the coach's coach. Okay? So let's just spend a couple minutes and see how you do in terms of coaching that person or lifting that person above the line who is stuck below. Now, one thing that I would suggest here, actually I'm not suggesting, one thing you should do, use the questions here. Okay? You might have other questions. You say, oh, well, I do it this way. Use the system here and see what your results are. Okay? So they will go through and they will do that for this. Okay? So, what did you find?
Found that by using the questions it was much easier.
Okay, so when you get to the solve it question, what's the important point in the solve it, facilitate the solve it question piece there?
Is that it stays within the boundaries of your expectations.
Who needs to come up with those solutions?
They do.
They do. Right? And this could be one of the toughest things, right? Because you can say, I can see it. I know what they need to do. But if you do that, what happens?
You own it.
It becomes your solution. It has to become their solution. So when should you offer your advice? Only when asked for. If they are stuck and they are saying, I really need your help here, do you have any suggestions? I would go back to what else can you do to try to see if they're truly stuck, and then you can get, but it cannot happen until they ask for your help. Or else it becomes your problem, your solution.
It's the broken squares game.
It's the broken squares game. All right, so let's become experts on this now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll notice that there are 6 scenarios that are up on this board over here. A server who is not achieving add-ons. Partner B, you are going to play the server who is not achieving. Partner C, you now become the coach. Partner A, you become the coach's coach. Okay? You can use either your booklet or you can use that, but you want to make sure you're taking notes. And you're going to use a lift model and go ahead and coach that person up. Now we're going to talk through, have everybody play this one, and then we'll come back together, talk about what are some of the things that you found out, and then we will go through the other 5 scenarios throughout so that everybody gets a chance to do at least 2 each. So, what have we learned here today? To be continued.
To be continued.